Recently, I uploaded a video where I tried to beat Bruno in Fire Red and Leaf Green using every Pokemon available in the Kanto region. This video is a follow-up to that one, so if you haven't seen it yet, I'd recommend you check it out before continuing on with this video. By the end of the aforementioned video, the results were pretty conclusive, and after testing our might against the Elite Four's premier fighting type trainer, we managed to get a victory with nearly every single Pokemon in Kanto's Pokedex. But there were two glaring asterisks in the challenge. Two Pokemon who were just a little too weak to solo his team on their own. Two Pokemon that, at least at the time, couldn't get the job done. These were, of course, Magikarp and Ditto, two of the weakest individual Pokemon to appear in the Kanto region, and they were the only things that held us back from getting a perfect victory, and proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Bruno ain't shit. But after releasing that video, I quickly realized that these Pokemon weren't the problem. At least, not entirely. We received a lot of comments from all of you outlining some ways that these two Pokemon very much could solo Bruno's team, with the right loadout and resources. And thanks to the passion and knowledge displayed within them, it very quickly became clear that the real issue was me. I'll be honest, I'm not the most competent challenge runner or Nuzlocker out there, far from it. At the end of the day, I'm just some bozo warping a children's game for fun and uploading the results onto the internet. There's a lot that I don't know about these games, and my strategies will definitely often be lacking in depth and ingenuity. But if there's one thing I can do, it's take the advice of people who know more than me. And thanks to the honest and helpful comments that all of you left, I realized that it should be possible, and even simple, to knock Bruno off of his pedestal for good with these two Pokemon. So that's what I'm here to do, to follow your advice, beat Bruno with Magikarp and Ditto, and to wrap a nice bow around this challenge and move on. I'd also like to take a little bit of time to discuss the future of this type of challenge on the channel and to ask for some opinions, so be sure to stick around until the end for that. Now let's get to it. In the original video, I was almost able to get the victory with Magikarp even using my overall suboptimal strategy of Flail plus a Silk Scarf while banking on missed hits from Bruno's Onixes to avoid being knocked out. We received quite a few comments wondering whether we tried using Magikarp's other damaging move Tackle instead, and I wanted to address that option here. A max attack and speed Magikarp holding the leftovers and running both Tackle and Flail was actually the first set that I tried in the original recording. The idea was that if I just focused on Tackle when my health was high and Flail when my health was low, I would be able to actually tank hits and deal more damage overall, eventually gaining a victory. Although I think this would eventually work with enough repetitions, there were a few hangups that made me think it wasn't the most optimal strategy for this particular challenge. Tackle, even with maxed out attack, doesn't do that much, and in a generation where Tackle misses 5% of the time, 100% of the time, we ended up taking more damage than I expected before we were ever able to feint the first Onix. On most attempts, I ended up having to rely on using Flail at low health anyway to take it out, which made all of that damage dealt with Tackle mostly meaningless. And on top of that, this set made it so that we were nearly guaranteed to eat at least 3 or 4 Rock Tombs before feinting the Onix, each of which lowered our speed. And when our speed was lowered to that extent, by the time the Hitmonchan came out, it didn't matter whether it chose Mach Punch or Sky Uppercut, we were getting hit first and dying either way. Ultimately, while I think this set could work under perfect circumstances, through my attempts it didn't seem consistent enough to warrant any more time spent on it. And so I had to return to the set that ultimately got us our half victory in the original video, starting at low health and using Flail, all while hoping that his Onixes missed their attacks and the Hitmonchan didn't use Mach Punch. This set worked decently well in the original video, but the main issue I ran into was that I had to avoid 2 attacks from the first Onix, a Mach Punch from the Hitmonchan, and then 2 more attacks from the second Onix. According to Alex, who was kind enough to do the math on this, the chances of that happening were abysmally low, and resulted in us turning to save states to get the job done in theory. Luckily, however, it turns out that there's a very simple change to this strategy that will make it both more damaging and consistent, and drastically increase our chances of getting the W. As so many of you pointed out, the Silk Scarf was not at all the strongest item we could be equipping to Magikarp. Because we were only planning to use one move in the fight anyway, the Choice Band, which raises a Pokemon's attack by 50%, was going to make our attacks much stronger, and would cut down on how many moves we would have to evade before getting the victory. Being honest with you guys, I kind of forgot about this item. You can't obtain it normally in Fire Red and Leaf Green, and instead have to trade it from Hoenn, where you receive it either at the Battle Tower or Battle Frontier. Actually, in most games you won't encounter this item in a normal playthrough, and it's used more often in competitive sets and post-game content, which could help explain why it slipped my mind. For a challenge runner on YouTube, I'm surprisingly casual about my Pokemon sets, and this thing wasn't directly on my radar for a Fire Red Leaf Green challenge run. But even still, it would be perfectly obtainable in a run of these games, which means it's definitely valid for this challenge, and I appreciate all of you bringing what probably should have been an obvious strategy to my attention. Running into Bruno with 1 HP, max attack and speed, and a choice band wrapped tightly around our Magikarp, I immediately realized how possible this would be. While the core challenges of the battle remained the same, meaning we still had to avoid getting hit by the Onixes or Hitmonchan, the added damage from the choice band made a huge difference, and it became possible to KO the Onixes in 2 hits rather than 3. Although there were still plenty of runs where the Onix hit its move and KO'd us, the percentage of fights where either the Onix missed or we got a crit increased substantially. The Hitmonchan still hit Mach Punch frequently enough to be annoying, but in the cases where he didn't, we breezed through his 2 other fighting types and came face to face with his second Onix. This is where we got stuck last time, and the point at which we turned to save states. But with the choice band equipped and a guaranteed 2-hit KO on deck, it only took a few attempts against this Onix for it to miss a Sand Tomb, and give our Magikarp the chance to flop around so destructively that it ended Bruno's entire career and got us our victory. And that's that. Bruno defeated with a Magikarp, with no asterisk. With this challenge cleared, we only have one more. Ditto is an interesting case because, ultimately, my strategy wasn't technically incorrect. While a struggling Ditto could probably get a victory against Bruno, especially if we used some of the spicy strategies that you all suggested, it turns out there's a way easier method of getting the win with our original transform strategy. Normally, when Ditto transforms, it copies the stats of its opponent along with its typing and moveset, which made this strategy much more challenging in the original video. After all, with how weak we've proven Bruno to be, it makes sense that taking on his form would make things more difficult for us. But thanks to all of the comments on the video, I was made aware of arcane knowledge that I somehow glossed over when I was reading the Bulbapedia page for Transform as a move, which changed everything. As I learned, in generations 1 to 3, there's a feature, or maybe it would be better to call it a fortunate oversight, that allows us to bypass the stat drop that comes with transforming into his Onix. If we start out at level 99 instead of level 100, on the cusp of leveling up, and defeat his Onix after transforming into it, the subsequent level up will recalculate our stats and allow us to reach our full potential, rather than being shackled by Bruno's weakness. Once we've done this, getting the victory becomes as simple as pressing A and letting our choice band boosted earthquakes knock the rest of his team over like bowling pins. It turns out, it was just that easy. Thank you all so much for showing me that Bruno is even more shit than I originally imagined. Thanks to your help, we're able to defeat Bruno with the final 2 remaining Pokemon in the Kanto Pokedex, and take away what little pride remained in his possession. Additionally, this allows us to change his BQ to reflect these new victories. For those who need a refresher, the BQ, or Bruno quotient, is the percentage assigned based on how many Pokemon were able to solo a particular trainer, and so gives us a rough idea of their overall strength. Originally, Bruno ended up with a BQ of 99, but after these 2 victories, we can comfortably change that figure to a flawless 100. The weakest you can be. And isn't that just right for our boy? He really ain't shit, but we can't help but love the guy. But here at the end of the video, I want to talk a little bit about the future of the BQ metric, and ask for some opinions in the comments. For the original video and this one, I allowed myself to max out every Pokemon as high as they could go, both in level and EVs and IVs. Mostly because I knew that it was the only way I might get a total victory against Bruno, and back up our claim that he ain't shit. However, as I'm interested in doing more of these challenges, and also in turning the BQ into a more consistent and trustworthy rating, I think that some changes will have to be implemented in the future. If our target is an enemy of the Elite Four, or a similarly high-level trainer, sure, I might be able to justify bringing everyone up to level 100 to try and solo them. But what if we fight against someone like Misty, or Norman, or Cool Trainer Brooke? In those cases, it obviously wouldn't be fair, as any level 100 Pokemon could easily do away with their team. To counter this, my idea, which has also been suggested by many of you in the comments, is to limit our Pokemon to the highest level present on that opponent's team. For example, if we faced off against Norman in Pokemon Emerald, we would have to enter the fight with our Pokemon at level 31 and see how much of the Pokédex could solo him at that level in order to calculate his BQ. If we do this, we would be able to do a BQ challenge against essentially any trainer, which is much more appealing to me in theory. Of course, this would come with some drawbacks. Doing this, it would become much less likely for weak Pokemon such as Caterpie and Magikarp to beat their opponent. However, the trade-off that we then get a more consistent and rigorous statistic to compare trainers with seems worthwhile to me. Personally, I think this is the most sensible way to turn the BQ into a metric that can be applied to any trainer, but be sure to let me know what you think. I want to continue this challenge in a way that seems fair to everyone, so I would really appreciate hearing your thoughts on it. The other primary question that needs to be asked is how we approach choosing which Pokemon will be used to calculate a BQ from this point on. For Fire Red and Leaf Green, it was pretty simple to limit ourselves to the 151 original Pokemon, but later games in the series become a bit more troublesome. Although there are a few ways to go about it, I've been thinking that it would make the most sense to either limit ourselves to only the new Pokemon introduced in that region, and thus making each BQ region specific, or to limit ourselves to only the Pokemon which appear in that game's regional Pokedex, regardless of origin. Although the number will differ for each game we attempt this on, as long as the rule stays consistent, I think the BQ can too. And finally, there's the question of banned moves. So far, I've only banned Attract, Double Team, and Hidden Power, but I wanted to hear what you all think about this ban list. While I think Attract and Double Team are too strong of a duo to ever be allowed, would there be any interest in allowing Hidden Power now that the levels will be uniform, or should we just keep Hidden Power banned? Are there any other moves you think are broken and need to be removed? I'd be interested to hear your opinions on this, so please let me know. Aside from that, I think our rule set for the BQ challenge is pretty decent. As I continue to make these videos and flesh out this system, I'm sure there will be minute changes here and there, but ultimately my goal is to be able to make a consistent and credible ranking of trainers based on their Bruno quotient, which can be referenced and generally hint at a trainer's difficulty level. That's why I wanted to take this time to hear your opinions, so please, if you have any, don't be afraid to lay them out below. I'll be sure to read through all of them. And also, I'm aware that this change will immediately void our 100% success rating with Bruno, but that's a sacrifice I'm willing to make in order to make this rating system more legitimate. Even if it means I'm going to have to fight Bruno again to get his real BQ, I'll do it. After all, he ain't shit, and I'm sure his BQ will be considerably lower than his peers either way. And as I'm sure you've all realized by now, I will always welcome a chance to make fun of Bruno. But I think that's enough from me, at least for now. At the end here, I just want to thank you all again for your kind comments on the Bruno video, and all of your suggestions. I know I might not be the most skilled or knowledgeable Pokemon player, but I hope I'll be able to offer you some enjoyment and entertainment nonetheless. If you have any thoughts at all on the future of the BQ ranking and how we can make it better, please let us know. I think that together we can make a really fun and special video series here, and I'm really excited to get to work on ironing it out and making it more consistent. We'll be doing more videos in this series, so if you want to keep up with them, I would encourage you to subscribe to see those and any other challenge runs or Nuzlocks we put out. Thank you all once again. I hope you have a lovely day. I'll see you next time, and as always, stay phenomenal.